you really look around and go, well, what can I count on? That's what I did, Okay, so churches are going to fail me, people are going to fail me, and everybody knows that. But what happens when it hits you so hard that you're just not really sure what is trustworthy anymore? What holds me in place, or what I hope holds me in place, is that God gives me the strength and the energy for that day.
Complex, disappointing, personal. 3 words that this week's guest would use to describe her faith journey after graduation. I wonder what words you might use, alumni. We've recently had a number of episodes where we've heard from experts and the tools that they would recommend to you and your ongoing faith development in this season after graduation. But now it's time to hear from some of your fellow alumni like you, who are just a few steps ahead in their journey. They've hit bumps in the road, they've been ready to give up, and at times they have given up. But they've also seen the amazing goodness of God walking through all of it with them. This week, we're joined by my friend and chapter mate from Minnesota State Mankato, Erica Spanjers, and Erica is going to share about the hurt and disappointment that she's experienced in not 1, but 2 instances of a church being damaged by abuse, but also how her relationship with God has deepened in ways that she couldn't have imagined and probably wouldn't have experienced if it weren't for navigating these painful moments with Him. Welcome to After 4, your podcast for navigating life after graduation. I'm your host and guide, John Steele, and this one's for you, alumni. Erica, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to have you, and I guess I should say excited to have you back. Erica, you were like one of the early guests of this podcast back in, I don't know, I feel like it would have been spring-ish of 2021, probably. So, it's been 4 years since we got to hang out.
Yeah.
In this way.
Wow. And look at you now. Look at the podcast now, John. You have doctors and people that write books and really cool people on. And there's been some really cool episodes.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I include you in the list of really cool people that get to be on this podcast. I'm excited to. And Steve Beatty. Yes, exactly. I get to have a lot of cool people on this podcast. And so I really am grateful to have you back on here and to step in with us in the series that we're looking at. Yeah, Erica, so you're an InterVarsity alumna. We were on campus together at the same time. You graduated, around 2014 from Minnesota State? Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, nice. And and you're joining us here in the midst of a series that we're doing that's talking about faith transition, that's talking about some of the ins and outs, the challenges and realities, the hardships and the hope that we have in following Jesus after graduation. And there's a lot to the faith journey after stepping away from our campus community. And you've been through a lot of the different things that happen through that journey. Erica, I'm gonna ask you a question that I don't think I've asked any guest before. Now maybe it'll take us in a similar direction, but I don't think I've ever used this particular question. And that's as you think about what the last, almost 11 years have been since graduating from college, from moving on from Minnesota State. Are there like 2 or 3 words that you would use to describe what your faith journey in particular has been like, walking with Jesus in the last decade or so?
Yeah. I'm glad you opened it up to 3 words because 2 feels very constraining. And I'm glad that I would say that the 3 words would probably be complexity, disappointment,
okay,
and personal. Those are the 3.
Okay. Complexity, disappointment, and personal. All right. What is it? I'm hopeful that we can maybe step into a story that will illustrate some of these elements. But just big picture, like what is it about the last 10 years or so that those are the 3 words that really stand out to you as you think about describing that journey?
Yeah, I would say that the past 10 years. And those three words work together because my personal faith has kind of expanded. It's gone from 2D to 3D.
Okay.
It's been gaining depth and breadth in a way. Like when I was a kid, I thought of faith as accept Jesus into your heart, go to Awana on Wednesdays, go to church on Sundays, pray before dinner, pray before bed, right? Like task-based,
totally.
but very conceptual, very easy to execute on and kind of flat, right? So the complexity now of my faith is, well, what does God want me to do with my life? Right? You kind of started playing around with that in college. And then now you're in life. You're out of college. This is life. Now what does God want me to do with my extra spare bedroom in my home? How does God want me to interact with this person I don't really like on a daily basis?
Yeah.
Right? And it's not... And so that's a complexity in the depth. I would also add that along with the complexity, that personal element comes in, right? It's not just I'm going to Awana on Wednesdays. It's God's asking me about my spare bedroom in my home that I own. And so now it's becoming personal. Also, I've learned a lot with kind of that personal faith versus going to church faith, or personal faith versus being around other Christians' faith. What does that look like?
Yeah.
And how do those two worlds come together? And then I think if you've lived more than 20 years of life, with many of our listeners have, you've probably encountered some disappointments. And I think that that's very real. And I think the transitions of life can leave us disappointed when we had expectations for something else, something better, something very specific that didn't come to fruition.
Yeah.
Or even just the letdown of the transition, right? I liked where I was. Why do I have to move on?
Yeah.
That's a disappointment. But how do you handle those disappointments in life? You just throw it all out the window. You say, that's fine. Just don't hope for anything else. Just don't want anything else. Just know that the next part of your life is going to be worse and just prepare for that. Or do you bring it, what does God say about that? How are we supposed to look at that? What is the biblical right way to look at that? And what is God telling me specifically about my specific disappointment? How is he meeting me in that?
Yeah. And is experiencing disappointment, is that indictment is the word that's coming to my mind. I don't think that's the word that I want to use. Does disappointment, does it teach us something about God, or does it teach us something about ourselves? Like, is it disappointment because oh man, God isn't actually all that I thought he was cracked up to be? Or is it disappointment over like, man, maybe the plans that I had for myself are not all that I thought they were cracked up to be.
Right.
And like, where is that? Where does the weight or the ownership of that disappointment, where does it sit? And how do we interpret disappointment?
Right.
You and I talked not too long ago, I brought up this song that you didn't know it at the moment, and I'm guessing it's very possible that our audience won't know it either. Maybe it's old enough that they're like, I've never heard of that song. But it's the song "King of My Heart," and it has the bridge in the English version of this song. The bridge is "You're never gonna let me down." And I think that song, I think that is like terrible theology because I think it's unrealistic expectation. Like I feel let down. I have felt let down by God's plans for me many times. But what I like is the Spanish version of that bridge. And you speak Spanish pretty fluently, so maybe you can give me the actual translation of this so that I don't screw it up. But the bridge that I know in Spanish is "Tú no me fallarás, nunca fallarás jamás." So can you tell me what what the translation is of that specifically?
You will not fail me. You will never fail me. Not ever, I would add to the end. Jamás.
That is,
not
yes,
ever.
Not ever. That's awesome. See, I really like that idea because to me, I feel let down by the realities of life and even the things that God invites me into a lot. But with some distance from those things, I can look back and say, but God has never failed me. Like in the midst of all of those disappointments, he has not failed. And it feels like that's a really interesting point of tension for us to wrestle with in our expectations and when we experience disappointment, and like, what does that actually mean for us?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And and thank you for saying that you have been let down by God, because I don't hear that a lot.
Oh my gosh.
By other people. And and I think there's small, intimate spaces where it can be said out loud and people can understand and not say, well, you are just a bad Christian. You just get out of this small group. Like you're just not cut out for Christianity. I really appreciate that, because what happens after I'm let down by him? You know, what do I do? You know, if I can muster up the gumption to say, hey, you really let me down, God, or I feel let down and sorry that I'm even kind of coming at you like this, but I'm really let down. He always meets me with, yeah, I know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you're disappointed. Yeah. You know, he doesn't say, well, actually, Erica, here, let me just tell you why I'm right and you're wrong. And you'll feel better soon enough. Yeah. Like, let's just push past. Like, he meets me right where I'm at. And he doesn't sometimes he doesn't usually explain himself, you know, or justify.
Right.
And so that's where the faith comes in, and you go, huh, he heard me. Yeah. He cares. They say that he has good plans for us, so I'm just going to go with that.
Yeah.
And that's my choice.
Yeah.
And then try to believe it a little bit more every other day after that.
Yeah, I really appreciate the comment about, you know, he doesn't necessarily explain himself. He doesn't feel the need to justify, and he certainly doesn't go back on his, you know, there are times like as a parent, there are times that I'll do or say something, I'll set up a plan okay, I think this is the right direction for us to go, that can be a huge letdown to people in my family. Our 6-year-old in particular lets me know how often she's let down by the plans that I make. And there are times that I feel very tempted to say, oh, shoot. Okay, never mind. Right. We don't have to do it that way. And, you know, maybe there are times when I think better of it and I'm like, you know, I was doing that for the wrong reasons. But those things that are like healthy and good for her, of like, no, you really need to brush your teeth. Yeah. like I know you just want to go play. You just want to go to bed, but you really need to brush your teeth. Right. That God he's like, this is what's best for you. I feel the pain that you feel, and I'm going to come alongside you in the midst of that, but I am going to ask you to keep moving in this direction with me, and we're going to do it together. And that's really hard. But at least we have a loving God who does it with us. Right. And test him. If you don't think that he loves you and that he's just being mean, test him on it. Yeah. Because he's always shown me he loves me, but he does make me brush my teeth too. Like, yeah, exactly. Erica, can we move into sort of like an illustrative moment here? You know, we talked stories. I'm happy to share moments as well if it's helpful. But Like, I would be interested to hear, as you've been thinking about our conversation together, as you think about those 3 words that you described your faith journey in particular after graduation. Like, is there a story or 2 that you can share that illustrates one or more of those, complex, disappointing, personal, and just gives some insights into the reality of what this has looked like for you?
Yeah, definitely. I'll probably start with the most recent.
Okay.
I was a part of a church plant for a couple of years, most recently, and it last Sunday was our last Sunday together. It dissolved, and it dissolved due to a really unfortunate situation with some unofficial leaders in the church that were abusive towards other congregants and other leaders, and to the detriment of our pastor was no longer able to preach.
Wow.
And we were left with 2 people playing. Actually, one Sunday, it was just my friend playing piano for worship. And then an interim pastor came in and spoke. But so I'm without a church.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I remember feeling when I graduated. And I didn't have InterVarsity anymore. You didn't have your people. You didn't have your faith group.
Yeah.
You're like, well, now what? I really kind of liked those people. I liked hanging out with them and eating macaroni and cheese, but I also liked throwback memory for you. But I also liked kind of learning how to read the Bible together and kind of talking about God stuff and being able to ask those questions and say those taboo things like, I'm disappointed with God.
Yeah.
So now here I am 11 years later, I'm in transition. I'm without a church. And this isn't the first time that I've been left without a church. This actually happened I shouldn't say left without a church. I'm in transition between churches. Couple of years prior to that, I was volunteer unofficial staff for another church plant for about 4 or 5 years. And those were my people. That was my pastor.
Yeah.
It was during COVID. It was during George Floyd. And we were in the park less than a block away from where George Floyd died. So, there was so much meaning and purpose in our gathering and what we were doing. And then you get really into church and you get a up front row seat of the pastors and the other volunteers. You're like, oh, wow, this is kind of messed up. Like, you guys are kind of your people. And actually now this is to the detriment of our ministry. And so I've kind of seen it twice.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that those were bad churches by any means. I will acknowledge the abuse that occurred in my previous church and say that was bad and wrong.
Absolutely.
But I also think there's a level of that's what happens when you get involved in a church community and when you have connections and relationships. You begin to see even leaders and pastors with their faults. And you begin to see that even in all the good, happy, good feeling church stuff, there's abuse, there's ill motives, there's negative motives, but yet, didn't we do something good? Weren't we preaching? What about when we were serving? Was that okay, or is that coming back null and void?
Right.
So, you can see how complexity is kind of coming into the picture here.
Yes. And the fact that this has happened like a couple of different times, this wasn't just a one-off. So, I mean, so then thinking about the like next steps, like what does this do for you as you think about trying again? I mean, I guess maybe I'm making assumptions here that you're planning on trying again. But you know, where does this leave you in this place of like, this has happened to me like a couple of times, and to the community that I've been a part of, is it worth it to try again? Like, I'm not expecting you to have a fully formed like answer. I just in real time, like, where are you at in processing through that?
Yeah, this time around, I know that it's worth it. I'm so grateful. I took a break from church after my first church plant experience.
Okay.
And I learned that God loves me even when I'm not serving my day and night or 3 times a week or on a church plant staff. Like, he loves me. He loves me when I don't go to church too. But he had something for me at my next church. He had friendships for me. I actually learned a lot about how to read the Bible and interpret the Bible. Interpret maybe isn't the right word. How to process God's word through what I'm reading and how he's speaking to me in conjunction together. If I hadn't gone back to church, I wouldn't have gotten that. And so that is what led me this time around to say, yep, I'm not going to church so that I can be a good Christian. I'm not going back to church just for the friends.
Yeah.
I'm not going back to church just to find my husband, though that is a good motivator for me most days.
Of course.
I believe that God can continue to grow me and use me, maybe in not big, crazy ways, but in ways that are valuable enough that he wants me to be a part of the church.
Yeah.
And this is the best advice I got when it comes to looking for a new church or whatever. And I would even say this would kind of apply to InterVarsity. Like, if you love your InterVarsity chapter and your people, right, you graduate, it's sad. So you're like, well, I'm an adult now, I guess. Now church is my new InterVarsity. Like, maybe that's where I look for my friends and my people. And it can be so hard for that to ever live up. How could it ever live up to that those community?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think it can. And I think take that and say, it doesn't have to, and I'm not looking for it to. So that's what I have to say about this next church for me is it doesn't have to be as awesome as this past church was, where I met the friends and grew and liked church again.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to meet that standard. It just has to, I just have to show up and engage. And I don't have to pick. I can just land there for a little bit. That was the advice, was just land. Show up late, leave early. You don't have to talk to people if you don't want to. Just go and engage and take it slow. Big transitions are hard, and sometimes baby steps is all we can do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And what does it look like to do that in partnership with God? You know, not like I gotta find a church so that I can get reconnected with God again, but instead to be like, God, can we do this together? Like, can we sit down? And as I'm like sort of mapping out, all right, which church am I going to go check out for the next few weeks here? Like, which church am I picking out for this month that I'm going to go like 3 or 4 times so I get a good feel for it, or whatever your process is. Either way, to say like, God, would you sit down with me and be a part of planning and preparing and thinking through this next step of the process? And like, what does it look like to envision God going to church with you, like as your partner in this process, and saying like, we're doing this together. I'm not going to find where God is because God's already with me.
Say that again, John. That is so good. Yeah, it's true.
But how often do we do that? Do we sort of separate those things as like, well, now I'm on my own again? And there is some element of like, there are some of those relationships certainly that you're not going to experience. That there's some of that preaching and teaching and that particular communal experience that you're not going to have again in that specific way. But God is still with you. Like he has ridden that wave with you. He has lamented that broken situation with you. He is at work in the lives of those people, and he's still right there with you as you look for the next place to land. And what does it look like for us to walk in step with the Lord as you are searching and feeling like feel lost with God? Like, okay. Let him be the guide who maybe isn't giving you all the answers all the time. As we've already said, this God that sort of comes alongside you and says, like, I know that was rough. That's not what I intend for you, but that is the reality of this world. I have something else in store. Just come with me and I'll get you there. When things feel or look hopeless, what gives you hope? And like, what are you holding on to that keeps you moving? Or at least that keeps you sitting right here and saying, I'm at least not going to go backwards. I need to just plop down here for a minute and then I will make some more progress forward. But right now I need to just stay right here and hang on tight. Like, how have you done that? Or what's helped you do that, I should say?
Yeah, I think that it's when you're at that low place, maybe where things are stripped away, your comforts or your regular or the thing you thought you could always count on are stripped away. You really look around and go, well, what can I count on? That's what I did, Okay, so churches are going to fail me. People are going to fail me. And everybody knows that. But what happens when it hits you so hard that you're just not really sure what is trustworthy anymore, right?
Yeah.
What holds me in place, or what I hope holds me in place, is that God gives me the strength and the energy for that day. I don't have my next church figured out. I don't have my future figured out. I still don't know what I'm doing with that spare bedroom. But I have food in the fridge, and my heart is heavy, but I think I'm going to be able to show up to work today and do my day job. And maybe I'll feel a little better tomorrow. Yeah. I don't know. He's the only thing I can count on. I just need him. And selfishly, I just need comfort, God. I just need your peace. I know I'm a grown adult, but I'm feeling like a child who needs comfort. I just feel so blown around in the wind or unsure. And that gets me through that day. And then those days kind of turn into weeks, and they get a little easier, right? And then suddenly you're able to think about that next step, that next hard thing that you never thought that you'd ever be ready for. It would take too long for me to be ready to think about my next church or to think about my next move.
Yeah.
That bedroom that's hanging over my head. Like I'm not ready to think about it. And somehow he gives us the grace to conceptualize it and then take another small step. And then before you know it, like, oh, I think this is progress. I think this is kind of where he wants me going.
Yeah.
And just ask God for what you need, and he'll give you just enough for that day.
Yeah.
But those days do add up, and he'll help you get there. Just focus on what you need from him now, and he won't fail you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that, give us this day our daily bread. Like that's all I have in me to hope for, or to I can make it through today. If you'll give me what I need for today, I think I can do today. And then we'll deal with tomorrow when it gets here. Erica, as you think about other alumni like you who are just starting their decade journey after graduation.
11 years, not 10.
Their 11 year journey. Yes. As you think about those alumni who are just getting ready to go out on this journey and who will experience hard times and who will experience really joyful, great times too. Like, I don't want to paint this grim picture of life after graduation.
It's not grim.
No, but it is hard. Like, it can be both of those things. It can be good and joyful and just sometimes devastatingly hard at the same time. Yeah. It can be all of those things. What advice, what's a final encouragement or piece of advice that you would give to those alumni as they think about the big shifts that are going to happen in time in their faith journey with Jesus?
I think the best investment you'll make, best return on investment, will be what you invest in your faith, in your relationship with God. If you have issues with the church, if you have issues with the world, if you have questions, if you have issues with some Bible verses you read, you can bring that to him. And those are, when I started to do that, and when I started to say the things I was afraid to say in InterVarsity because I didn't want them to think I was a bad Christian or something, that's when God taught me that he could handle it and that he had some level of resolution for me. Not always. And that is all those 5 years at my church, the first church plant and the 2 years at this one. They're great and there was fruit. But what I invested with just my personal faith and me and God in that relationship, that's going with you wherever. If you move states, if you move churches, heck, if you end up divorced, if you end up with loss, whatever you experience, that relationship, that teammate that you've been building with, that relationship goes with you. I mean, I sometimes step away from him, but he never leaves me. And because he hasn't left me, I can go back to him. And that's what I take with me.
Alumni, if you can identify with Erica's experience, you are not alone. Our faith journey is so much more complex than we might realize. It can be so much more disappointing than we expected. But it can also be deeply personal and intimate with God as he walks through the heartbreak with us. And as we bend and break and are put back together, we find a stronger, more durable relationship with our compassionate and loving God. Alumni, he is for you and he is with you. Hold on to hope. It will so be worth it, I promise. And if you can't identify with Erica's experience, praise God for that. But also, prepare. Prepare with God for the moments that will come where your faith is tested. Build those deep, intimate rhythms with him now so that your house is built on the rock when those rains inevitably come. And then, hold on to hope because God is for you and he is with you in those times. Erica, thank you so much for joining me and for sharing so vulnerably. I am incredibly grateful for you, my friend. The rest of you, make sure you come back next week for another alumni testimony. We're going to hear from Rocco and his story about walking away from faith for years and his miraculous return to Jesus. Until then, consider sharing this episode with someone who needs to hear it, and I will see you in the after, alumni. Thanks for listening to After 4. This podcast is brought to you by the InterVarsity Alumni Relations Team, hosted and produced by John Steele, production assistance by Mike Zentera, edited by Caleb Leppert, and our After 4 theme music was written and performed by John Steele.